What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a look at Crimson Desert several months after its release back in March, of course. And since that release, we've seen, I would say, about 17 major patches, some news about an upcoming DLC, and more than anything, I just kind of wanted to jump into it and kind of see where the game was these days, mostly because I never forget the ones that got away. If you remember when I reviewed this game earlier this year, I did not get the 100% on it. I missed a handful of achievements, and that is because I am still waiting on them. And that is because this game has an awful achievement list, but there's about 6 achievements, I believe it is, that I left behind for one reason or another, some of which, I mean, honestly, we're just going to require patches to fix or at least make a little easier, and that is because it's possible to back yourself into a corner, or at least it was, with things like bandit camps, etc. not respawning, and that's the kind of thing a lot of these patches have been addressing over the past few months. But I will get a chance again to get all of those when the DLC drops, because probably the biggest bit of news this game has received since it initially released is that it did well enough that they went ahead and confirmed a DLC. No idea on the when or anything like that, but we do know that there's one coming, and when that DLC drops, I will jump into it, of course, run through that DLC for a DLC review, and that's probably when I'll see about going back and getting the things that I missed in full. But very recently, we got another major patch for this game, and I did notice that the sort of things that were being addressed in those patches shifted, and it felt like just a good time to jump in and touch base. So let's actually do just that. What has this game been up to the past few months? Well, unsurprisingly, right after launch, most of the patches and everything that went out were mostly focused on fixing things. Basically, every patch they've put out has had some amount of quest fixes, general bug fixes, minor problems with things like lighting, etc. So that was to be expected. A lot of the early patches also focused on things like controls and just some general quality of life, like adding more fast travel points. So things really started getting kicking with 1.01. 1.01 added new mounts and addressed some of the control issues. So the game has a lot of cool animals, and at first a lot of them were not something you could mount, but enemies would ride on them, and since then they've put out several patches that we'll mention here that added new mounts to the game. Now, this early patch also focused on the controls. If you remember, at release, especially on keyboard and mouse, the controls for this game were not great. They took some getting used to, and you could get used to them, but they took the opportunity of several patches to address and make tweaks to those, and it did genuinely get better over time. Now, patch 1.02 greatly expanded your personal storage, continued messing around with the controls, and added some more, again, just general gameplay fixes, and that was kind of elaborated upon in patch 1.03, which was primarily a quality of life patch, making minor tweaks to various things just to make them a little easier, like the exact timing on things being researched, or when you would gather knowledge from stuff, that sort of thing. Nothing too crazy. 1.04, on the other hand, was a very big patch in the sense that this one added difficulty options, basically making the game easier or harder as you pleased. It also added a bunch of new pets. There's a pet system in the game if you didn't know, and you could make more pets that way. And this was another patch that had yet more changes to the overall controls, making it easier to fine-tune exactly what you were picking up out of the environment when there were clutters of items, that kind of thing. 1.05 was another large patch that introduced rematch and reblockade. This basically allows you to, over time, see things like bandit camps, quarries, stuff like that, be taken over by hostile factions, and then you can go fight those factions. And this is a nice sort of quality of life feature just in terms of making sure that you have something to do and giving you alternative routes to gather rewards, but it's also a very functional one in the sense that some of the game's challenges, which are tied to the game's achievements, required you basically to do things in these camps, and if you weren't careful when the game first launched and cleared all that stuff out, which is easy to do because all those challenges were locked behind a collectible hunt, and still are, so you might not even know that you needed to spare some of these camps to make some of those challenges possible. So both a useful thing gameplay-wise, but also a necessary one if you actually wanted to get everything complete. Now, they also added with this patch the ability to rematch bosses, just refight them as they are, or scale them up to your current level even. So a very important patch on that front. Now, 1.06 went about adding yet more mounts, which would allow you to feed and subdue a lot of wild animals and stuff. Just one of the patches where they added those mounts and everything. And I will say right here roughly is where the patches kind of shifted from major features to things that are a little more tame. So we'll kind of blast through these next ones pretty quickly. 1.07 expanded a little bit on the boss rematch, just making more bosses available while also fixing some stuff. 1.08 gave you a dedicated tool slot, so you could have a secondary weapon in a different slot than the tools that you would use to perform various tasks, which is just a little quality of life feature really. It also added a fish pond to the Greymane camp, as well as even more pets. 1.09 allowed you to remap certain aspects of a controller, and it added even more pets. 1.010 added a wyvern mount, and improved some of the ways in which enemies would reblockade things. 1.11 added support for all of the pets that they've been adding in terms of, what you can actually have active at any given time, just kind of changing exactly how that worked. And it also added a feature where shops could collect rare loot that you would lose and then sell it back to you at a potentially increased price. 1.12 improved some of the housing, just kind of expanding things that were available there, and even letting you decorate outside of the house, I believe. It also allowed your two alternative characters besides Cliff to do things like mount Blackstar, the big dragon thing you get access to. 1.13 added a bunch of new equipment, about 50 pieces or so, spread across several different armor sets for both Cliff and Unka. I believe that's what his name was. It's been a little while. I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly. 1.14 added cross-save functionality. 1.15 was just fixes. 1.16 was interesting. It added, I kid you not, 133 trade posts, a bunch of wagon shops, and just generally updated and improved the trading system, where you would take trade goods from one place to another to offload them. This just expanded upon that and made it more available overall, which I would have to imagine probably made some of the trading challenges easier as well, but I have yet to verify that personally. And then last but not least, 1.17 was yet more just general fixes and stuff. So overall, again, there have been a lot of very substantial patches since this game released, but ultimately, I would describe this as a game that has gotten steadily better over the period from which it released until now. I think they have at least attempted to address a lot of the criticism this game received, and while they weren't able to address all of it, some of that I think will have to be saved for the DLC they plan to put out. You can clearly tell there has been a lot of effort put into this, but I said some things haven't been improved. Well, what hasn't really changed is that the story is a bit of a mess. I think it's possible they'll try to really lean into addressing some of that with a DLC, but even then I don't think they'll necessarily have the leeway to do everything that would be necessary in order to do that, because it would require some significant reworking of the main campaign at this point because of the way it's structured and everything. So there is some stuff that is still a little underwhelming, but compare that to them going out of their way to do what they could to fix the controls, which felt very awkward, while adding all of these quality of life features, addressing things people were asking for, like getting the extra mounts and getting the certain pets and stuff. Overall, I would just say Crimson Desert is already a much better game than when it released, even if it's obviously far from perfect, though altogether it does have me looking forward to the DLC and seeing how it pans out. But that is pretty much all I wanted this video to be. I just kind of wanted to go over what had been going on in the world of Crimson Desert since I left it last, and while I'm sure there will be some updates between now and when I pick it up again, the next time I really spend any amount of time with this game will be when that DLC drops, when I plan on finishing the 100% for this, so the knowledge of my failure will stop chipping away at the sides of my soul. But that's a problem for future Mortismal. Today, that is pretty much going to do it. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, by all means, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. Let me know how you feel about this if you're still playing it. I'm very curious to know how the people still actively playing it are feeling about it these days. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.